He has success, money, and a life surrounded by luxury, but he feels empty inside. A simple moment at the supermarket awakens something he thought he had lost long ago. And this small gesture of empathy begins a transformation that changes his life forever. If this story caught your interest, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and let us know what city you're watching from. Let's continue. I promise, this will be the best story you'll hear in your life. The December night fell heavy over New York City, bringing with it a biting chill that seeped through coats and made the air sharp. The lights of Midtown Manhattan blinked as always, indifferent to the exhaustion of the millions of people who crossed its sidewalks every day. Daniel Miller watched it all from his office on the 23rd floor, a glass of Scotch whiskey in hand, his gaze lost among the buildings that rose like giants of concrete and glass. 42 years old, and there he was, at the top of the corporate world, CFO of one of the largest corporations in the country, respected, even feared by many who worked under him. But that night, as he looked out at the city that never sleeps, Daniel felt an emptiness that no financial report could fill. His routine was impeccable, calculated down to the minute. He woke up at 5:30 every morning, without exception. An hour at the gym in his luxury condo building, a hot shower, black coffee with no sugar, a perfectly tailored Italian suit. By 7 o'clock, he was already at the office, before any of his employees. He ate lunch in his office, usually a grilled chicken salad ordered through an app, while reviewing spreadsheets and joining video conferences with investors from other continents. He left late, always late when the city lights were in full blaze and the traffic had eased a bit. He would return to his apartment, a 3,000-square-foot penthouse on the Upper East Side, with a panoramic view of Central Park, decorated by a renowned interior designer he barely knew. He ate dinner alone, always something quick, a frozen meal he'd heat up in the microwave while reading more reports or watching financial news channels. He slept little, woke up early, and the cycle began again. Daniel wasn't born into this life of privilege, far from it. He came from a small town upstate, where his father was a mechanic and his mother was a seamstress who took in work to make ends meet. He grew up watching his parents bend over backward to put food on the table, to pay the bills at the end of the month, to give him and his siblings a decent education. From an early age, Daniel understood that money was the only way to escape that life of constant struggle. He studied like a man possessed, spending entire nights hunched over old books and photocopied notes, until he won a full scholarship to a private university in New York City. He left his hometown at 18 with an old suitcase and a promise that he would return victorious. And he did return, a few times, in the early years. But as his career took off, the visits became rarer. At 25, he was already a financial analyst at a multinational. At 30, a senior manager. At 35, he became the youngest CFO in the history of a major American corporation. He was featured in business magazines, gave lectures on financial management, and became a benchmark in the market. But on the way to the top, he left a lot behind. His marriage, for example, which lasted only 4 years. He met Julia in college, and they married when he was 28, full of plans and dreams. But his dreams always involved numbers, targets, professional growth. Hers involved children, family dinners, quiet vacations. At 32, she asked for a divorce. Daniel never forgot the last words she said before walking out the door with her bags packed. "I feel like I'm a widow to a living man, Daniel. You're here, but you're not. You're never really here." He tried to argue, to say he was, building a future for them, that all the effort was for them. But Julia just shook her head with that sad look he spent years trying to erase from his memory. "I don't need a future full of money," she said. "I need a present with you." Daniel didn't know what to say. He let her go and dove even deeper into his work. It was easier to deal with spreadsheets than with feelings, easier to solve financial crises than emotional ones. Over time, his friends also faded away. The unreturned calls, the last-minute cancelled plans, the forgotten birthdays. One by one, they stopped trying. Daniel did nothing to stop it. After all, he had important meetings, urgent negotiations, targets to hit. Kids. He never had time to seriously think about it. Julia had wanted them, but he always said they needed to wait a little longer, until his career was more stable, until he had more financial security. But stability never came, because there was always a new ladder to climb, a new achievement to conquer. Now, at 42, Daniel looked back and saw a trail of professional successes and a desert of personal relationships. His parents had both passed away, one after the other, in the last 5 years. He was at the funerals, of course, but he wasn't there for them in their final years. There was always something more urgent, always a well-crafted excuse. His siblings barely spoke to him, and when they did, it was only for practical, bureaucratic matters. His own brother had become the distant relative, the one who only showed up for funerals and sent money on holidays. That December night, however, something different happened. Daniel left the office early, a rare, almost unprecedented event. It was only 7:30 when he shut down his computer and grabbed his Italian leather briefcase. His assistant nearly fell out of his chair in surprise. "Mr. Miller, is everything all right?" he asked, concerned, as if Daniel was sick. "Yes, everything's fine," Daniel replied with a tired half-smile. "I just need to take care of a few things." The things he needed to take care of were simple, even mundane. He needed to go to the supermarket. It had been years since Daniel had set foot in a supermarket. Everything he needed was delivered to his apartment by apps, or his housekeeper would buy it and put everything away. But that night, for some reason he couldn't explain, he felt the urge to do something so common, so human. He drove his silver BMW to a large supermarket in a quiet neighborhood in Queens, parked in the underground garage, and went inside. The place was crowded as expected on a December evening before the holidays. Entire families were shopping for their festive meals, children were running down the aisles, and employees were hastily restocking shelves. Daniel grabbed a cart and started walking aimlessly, observing the people, the products, that ordinary life he had forgotten existed. He passed the wine section and chose a bottle of Chilean red, nothing too special. He picked up a single-serving frozen lasagna, the same one he always ordered through the app. Some fruit, a package of cookies, mineral water. Deep down, his shopping list was depressing. Food for one, always for one. No variety, no joy, just the essentials to keep the body running while the mind worked. When he got to the checkout, the line was long. Daniel sighed, impatient as always, but forced himself to wait. He was trying to be a normal person, to do normal things. While he waited, his gaze wandered around the store at the people around him. That's when he noticed the family in front of him in line, a young couple, maybe in their early 30s. The woman was holding a baby in her arms, wrapped in a faded pink blanket, while the man carried a little girl of about 3. The girl had her face pressed against her father's neck, almost asleep. The woman wore a dark green coat, frayed at the elbows, old but clean. The man wore a blue button-down shirt that had been washed too many times, its original color, faded. They spoke softly to each other as they placed their items on the conveyor belt. Daniel watched what they were buying: baby formula, diapers, bread, some fruit, rice, beans, the bare essentials. The cashier scanned the items, and the total appeared on the screen. $38, $52.65. The woman bit her lower lip nervously, while her husband fumbled in his pants pocket, pulling out a few crumpled bills. When the cashier announced the total, $73.50, the man counted the money in his hand, once, twice. He looked at his wife, and Daniel saw the look of defeat on his face. The woman understood immediately. They didn't have enough money. They were $12 short. 12 miserable dollars that stood between that family and the food they needed. The woman closed her eyes for a second, took a deep breath, and then started taking items out of the bag. First the fruit, then the bread. The cashier, expressionless, began voiding the items. $68. Still not enough. The woman hesitated, looked at the baby in her arms, and then, with trembling hands, she picked up the can of formula and handed it back. It was in that moment that something inside Daniel broke. It wasn't a violent, explosive break. It was silent, deep, like an old crack finally giving way. He saw the tears the woman was trying to hide, turning her face away. He saw the man lower his head, hugging his daughter tighter, as if to shield her from the shame he was feeling. He saw the can of formula back on the counter, gleaming under the fluorescent lights of the supermarket, an object so simple yet so essential. Daniel didn't think. He just acted. He took a step forward and said in a voice he tried to, "Keep calm. Excuse me, can I help?" The couple turned, startled. The woman quickly wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "That's okay, sir," the man said, his pride wounded but his voice polite. "We'll figure it out." Daniel shook his head. "I know you will," he said, "but let me help this time, please." Before they could protest again, Daniel had already taken his wallet out and handed his credit card to the cashier. "Put everything they were buying back," he said, "including the formula, and add a few more things." He grabbed some chocolate bars, cream-filled, cookies, and an extra pack of diapers from the nearby shelf. The cashier looked at him, then at the couple, confused, but did as he asked. The man tried to refuse. "Sir, you don't have to do this. We'll manage." Daniel cut him off with a gentle gesture. "I know you'll manage," he repeated, "but today, let me. It's not charity, okay? It's just one person helping another." The woman started crying for real now, unable to hide it. "Thank you so much," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "You have no idea how much this means." Daniel smiled. A sad, crooked smile. "I think I do," he said softly, more to himself than to her. The transaction was completed. The bags were handed to the couple, who thanked him 3 or 4 more times, still in shock. Daniel nodded, bought his own things, and left the supermarket. He was almost at his car when he heard someone running after him. "Sir, wait, please." He turned and saw the man, out of breath, having left his wife and children a little behind with the groceries. The man extended his hand. "My name is Michael," he said, shaking Daniel's hand. Firmly. "Michael Davis, that's my wife Anna and our daughters Sophia, and the little one is Laura. I don't know how to thank you for what you did." Daniel shook his hand back. "Daniel Miller," he introduced himself, "and you don't need to thank me. Really." But Michael wouldn't let go of his hand. His eyes were watery, but there was a dignity there that impressed Daniel. "You don't know what we're going through," Michael said. "I lost my job over a year ago. I worked at an auto parts factory out in New Jersey, but the company went bankrupt. Since then, I've been doing odd jobs here and there, whatever comes up. Handing out flyers, helping people move, carrying groceries at the farmer's market. Anything. But it hasn't been easy. Anna can't work, because the doctor said she needs to be with the girls because of Laura, who was born premature and still has some health issues. We're living with my mother-in-law, all of us in a single room. It's hard, but we don't give up. And today, when I saw I couldn't even get milk for my daughter, I felt like the worst father in the world. You gave me my dignity back today. I don't know how, but one day I'll pay you back." Daniel felt a tightness in his chest. He didn't know how to handle this, so much raw emotion, so much truth laid bare. He had spent his whole life running from this kind of human connection. And now here he was, in a supermarket parking lot, holding the hand of a complete stranger who was pouring his heart out to him. He took a business card from his wallet, one of those elegant ones on special cardstock, with his name and title in gold letters. "Look, Michael," he said, handing him the card. "I don't know if I can do much, but if you need anything, give me a call. Maybe I can help you find a job opportunity. I can't promise anything, but I can try." Michael took the card as if it were gold. He looked at the printed name, then at Daniel. "You're a CFO?" "My God, I had no idea. I'm sorry for taking up your time." Daniel shook his head. "Don't apologize for anything, and you can call me Monday if you want." Michael nodded, still holding the card reverently. "I will, you can count on it." Daniel got in his car, started the engine, and sat there for a moment before driving off. In the rearview mirror, he saw Michael walking back to his family, showing the card to Anna, the two of them talking animatedly. The woman looked in the direction of Daniel's car and waved gratefully. He waved back and pulled out of the parking lot. The entire drive back to his apartment, Daniel couldn't stop thinking about that family. About Michael, who despite being unemployed for over a year hadn't lost his dignity. About Anna, who held her baby so carefully, even with tears in her eyes. About the little girls, so small, so innocent, not yet understanding the hardships their parents were facing. He thought about the $12 they were short, such a ridiculous amount for him, something he'd spend on an espresso at the office, but which meant the difference between a child having milk or not. When he got home, Daniel put the lasagna in the microwave, but he wasn't hungry. He opened the bottle of wine, poured a glass, but didn't drink it. He stood on his balcony looking down at the illuminated Central Park, thinking about how absurdly disconnected his life was from the reality of most people. He had an apartment that could fit 5 families like Michael's. He had a car that cost more than many people would earn in years of work. He had a bank account with more zeros than he could spend in a lifetime, and yet he felt empty, incomplete, lost. While Michael, who lived in a single room with his wife, 2 daughters, and mother-in-law, who hadn't had a steady job in over a year, who had to choose between buying bread or milk, seemed to have something Daniel had lost long ago: purpose, connection, true love. Daniel spent the entire weekend thinking about that encounter. He couldn't work properly, a rarity for him. He was distracted, his mind always returning to the scene at the supermarket, to the look of defeat on Michael's face when he realized he didn't have enough money, to Anna's quiet tears, to the weight of that moment, which for him was just another evening, but for that family was possibly the lowest point they had reached, and to the strange sense of satisfaction he felt in helping, a satisfaction unlike anything he had experienced in years of professional achievements. No million-dollar bonus, no promotion, no corporate recognition had made him feel as good as seeing the relief on that couple's faces. On Monday morning, Daniel arrived at the office and dove into meetings as usual, but a part of his mind was waiting for the phone to ring, for Michael to actually call. The morning passed without any news. In the afternoon, he was in a video conference with investors when his secretary sent him a message. "There's a Michael Davis on the line. Says you asked him to call." Daniel excused himself from the meeting, saying it was urgent, and took the call. "Hello, Michael." The voice on the other end was nervous, uncertain. "Mr. Miller, it's Michael, from the supermarket. We met on Saturday. I know you must be busy, but you told me to call." Daniel smiled, a rare thing for him during work hours. "I did, and please call me Daniel. How are you?" Michael sighed on the other end. "Look, Daniel, I don't want to take advantage of your kindness, but I really need a job opportunity. Anything will do. Cleaning, maintenance, loading, whatever. I'm a hard worker, I'm punctual, I learn fast, I just need a chance." Daniel thought for a moment. The company he worked for was huge, with thousands of employees. Surely there was an opening in some department. "Look, Michael, I can't promise anything, but I'll see what I can do. Do you have a resume?" Michael was silent for a second. "I do, but it's a bit outdated. Can I email it to you?" Daniel gave him his personal email address. "Send it to me. I'll pass it on to the HR department and give a personal recommendation. We'll see what happens." Michael's voice trembled with emotion. "Thank you so much, Daniel. Seriously, thank you. I won't let you down, you can be sure of that." When he hung up, Daniel stared at the phone for a moment. What was he doing? He had never gotten personally involved with anyone like this. He always maintained a professional distance from everything and everyone. But something about that encounter had stirred him in a way he couldn't explain. Maybe it was the exhaustion of so many years living only for work. Maybe it was the loneliness finally taking its toll. Or maybe it was simply his humanity, which had been dormant for so long, suddenly waking up. It didn't matter why. What mattered was that he had decided to help, and he was going to see it through. He called the director of human resources, a competent and pragmatic woman named Sarah. "Sarah, I need a favor. I have a resume from someone I'd like you to take a look at." She hesitated. "Daniel, you know we don't do personal referrals like this. We have hiring processes." "I know," he replied, "but just take that look. If it's not a fit, that's fine. But I think it's worth giving him a chance." Sarah agreed, more to avoid conflict with the CFO than out of conviction. Daniel forwarded Michael's resume as soon as he received it. It was simple, basic, with no major qualifications. A high school diploma, some technical courses, experience mainly in production lines and general services. Nothing that would impress on paper. But Daniel insisted. "Sarah, this guy needs a break. He's a hard worker, responsible, has a family to support. Let's give him a chance." She sighed on the other end. "All right, Daniel. I'll see if we have any openings in maintenance or the stockroom, but he'll have to go through the normal process, interview and all." "Perfect," Daniel agreed. "That's all I'm asking for. A chance." 2 weeks later, Michael called again. He was crying, but this time they were tears of joy. "Daniel, I got it. I passed the interview. I start on Monday in the stockroom. I don't know how to thank you. You've changed my life." Daniel felt a strange sensation in his chest, a mix of joy and something else, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Pride, maybe. But not pride in himself, but pride in someone else. "Congratulations, Michael. I'm sure you'll do great." And so began a journey that would change both of their lives forever, in ways neither of them could have imagined at that moment. Monday arrived faster than Michael expected. He woke up at 4 in the morning, long before his alarm went off, his heart racing with a mix of anxiety and excitement. Anna was awake too, sitting on the narrow bed they shared in her mother's room. "Did you get any sleep?" she asked, gently stroking his hair. "A little," Michael lied, getting up. "But it's okay. Today's a new day, right?" Anna smiled, the same smile he had fallen in love with years ago when they met at a church social. "I'm so proud of you," she said. "Everything's going to be fine. You can trust me." Michael took a quick shower, put on his newest pair of jeans and a white shirt that Anna had carefully ironed the night before. He looked at himself in the bathroom mirror, trying to see the competent worker Daniel had seen in him. All he saw was a tired man marked by a year and a half of unemployment, but with a spark of hope in his eyes that hadn't been there for a long time. He left the house while it was still dark, took 2 crowded buses, and arrived at the company 40 minutes early. He waited nervously at the security desk until he was cleared to enter. The HR department welcomed him, gave him his uniform, explained the basic rules, and introduced him to his supervisor. Michael absorbed every word as if it were a survival lesson. He couldn't mess up, he couldn't disappoint Daniel, he couldn't lose this chance that felt like a miracle. The stockroom was a large, organized space, filled with shelves of parts, materials, and equipment. His job was to manage the inflow and outflow of everything, keep the inventory updated, and help with receiving goods. It was manual labor, yes, but it had dignity. It came with a steady paycheck. It had benefits. It had a future. The first few days were intense. Michael always arrived early and left late, volunteering for overtime that other employees turned down. He quickly learned the inventory control system, memorized the location of every item, and created his own methods to speed up the work. His supervisor, a serious man named Robert, noticed his effort. "You're doing well, Michael," he said on the Friday of the first week. "Keep it up." Michael thanked him, but didn't relax. He knew he was being watched, evaluated, judged. He was the guy who got in through a referral from the CFO, and that generated gossip. Some colleagues were nice, others made jokes, insinuating he only got the job because he knew someone important. Michael swallowed the taunts and worked even harder. He wanted to prove he deserved to, be there on his own merit, not as a favor. Meanwhile, on the 23rd floor, Daniel continued his routine, but something had changed. He found himself thinking about Michael, wondering how he was doing in his first job after so long. Part of him knew it was silly to worry like this, that he had done his part by getting him the position, and now it was up to Michael's own efforts. But another part, a part he didn't quite recognize, felt a strange sense of responsibility. It was as if he had planted a seed and now wanted to watch it grow. One Wednesday afternoon, he went down to the stockroom. It wasn't a planned decision, almost an impulse. He told himself he needed to personally check the department's efficiency, but deep down he knew he wanted to see how Michael was doing. He found him organizing boxes, sweaty but focused, talking to another employee about the best way to stack the material without damaging it. Michael saw him and almost dropped the box. "Mr. Miller," he said, his eyes wide. Daniel waved a hand. "Hi, Michael, just came to see how things are going down here. Everything okay?" Michael wiped the sweat from his forehead with his arm. Yes, sir, it's great. I'm learning a lot. The people here are nice. Daniel looked around, noticing the impeccable organization, the neat labels, the efficient categorization system. You're doing a good job, he said, and it wasn't just politeness. It was the truth. Michael smiled, that humble, slightly awkward smile of his. Thanks. I'm trying my best. Before leaving, Daniel hesitated. Look, if you need anything, any questions about the company, you can come to me. Michael nodded gratefully. I will. And thanks again, Daniel, for everything. Daniel left the stockroom with a strange sense of satisfaction. It was different from the satisfaction of closing $1 million deal or hitting a quarterly target. It was something simpler, more human. The weeks passed, and Michael solidified his position at work. Robert, the supervisor, praised his performance on several occasions. Sarah, the HR director, casually mentioned to Daniel that his referral had been a good one. The guy is doing very well, she said. It's rare to see someone so dedicated these days. Daniel just nodded, but inside he felt that strange pride again. Michael wasn't just punctual and hard-working. He was creative. He proposed improvements to the organization system that saved time. He helped train new employees. He stayed late when there were urgent deliveries. In 3 months, he was promoted to assistant coordinator. In 6 months, he was leading a small team. It wasn't anything grand, not a meteoric rise, but for someone who had been unemployed for 1.5 years, it was a huge victory. Daniel followed this trajectory from a distance. Sometimes he would go down to the stockroom for no apparent reason. Other times he would discreetly ask Robert about Michael's performance, but he maintained a professional distance until the day Michael came to see him. It was a Friday afternoon, and Daniel was about to leave when his secretary announced someone wanted to speak with him. It's Michael from the stockroom. He says it'll be quick. Daniel told her to send him in. Michael entered the office shyly, looking at everything as if he were in a museum. The room was enormous, with a mahogany desk, shelves full of books and awards, and a beautiful view of the city. Sorry to bother you, Daniel, Michael said, twisting his cap in his hands. I just wanted to thank you in person. Today marks 6 months since I started here, and my life has completely changed. Anna and the girls are doing well. I managed to rent a small apartment for us. Everything's on track. And it's all thanks to you. Daniel stood up, a bit embarrassed. It's not thanks to me, Michael. It's thanks to your hard work. I just opened a door. You're the one who walked through it and proved your worth. Michael shook his head. Without your help, I wouldn't have even gotten near that door, and I wanted to invite you to something. Anna's making lunch on Sunday, nothing fancy. Just something simple, but it would be an honor if you could come. The girls want to meet you properly, and we wanted to repay you, at least a little, for what you did for us. Daniel was surprised. A lunch? He hadn't been to a family lunch in years. He didn't even know how to act in such a situation. Look, Michael, I don't want to intrude on your day. Intrude? You won't be intruding at all. We really want you to come, please. There was such pure sincerity in the request that Daniel couldn't refuse. Okay, he said. What time? Michael's eyes widened, as if he couldn't believe he had accepted. Noon, 12:30. I'll text you the address. On Sunday, Daniel woke up not knowing what to expect. He dressed casually in jeans and a polo shirt, trying not to look too formal. He grabbed a good bottle of wine from his cellar and drove to the address Michael had sent. It was a simple building in a working-class neighborhood in Queens. He went up to the 3rd floor and rang the bell. Anna opened the door with a wide smile, baby Laura in her arms. Welcome, Daniel. We're so happy you came. The apartment was small, even cramped, but clean and organized. A living room with an old but tidy sofa, a Formica dining table, floral curtains on the windows. There was no luxury there, but there was something Daniel's apartment lacked. It had life. It smelled of home-cooked food. It had the sound of children's laughter. It had love on the walls. Sophia, the older daughter, ran up to him. Are you the Uncle Daniel that Daddy talks about so much? Daniel knelt to her level. That's me, and you must be Sophia. The girl nodded excitedly. I am. Do you want to see my drawing? Daniel spent the next few hours in a way he hadn't in decades. He played with Sophia, who showed him all her drawings and toys. He held Laura in his arms while Anna finished preparing lunch, feeling the warm weight of the baby against his chest and that distinct smell of a small child. He talked with Michael about sports, about life, about the hardships they had faced and their plans for the future. They had lunch together at the small table, a roasted chicken Anna had made with love, rice, beans, stuffing and salad. Simple food, but delicious, made with love. During the meal, Daniel watched the family. The way Michael and Anna looked at each other with understanding. How Sophia told animated stories and her parents listened with genuine attention. How Laura smiled whenever someone made a funny face. It was a simple happiness, but it was real. It was everything he didn't have. After lunch, while Anna put the girls down for their afternoon nap, Michael and Daniel talked on the small balcony. "You have a beautiful family, Michael," Daniel said, and there was a melancholy in his voice he couldn't hide. Michael noticed. "What about you, Daniel? Never remarried after the divorce?" Daniel sighed. "No. After my ex-wife left, I dove so deep into work that there was no room for anything else. I built a successful career, but I destroyed everything else in the process. Now, looking at you all, I realize how much I've lost." Michael was silent for a moment. "It's not too late to start over, you know. You're still young, you have your whole life ahead of you." Daniel gave a sad smile. "I don't know if I know how to do that anymore. I've been alone for so long it's become my normal." Michael put a hand on his shoulder. "You don't have to be alone. We're here. You're welcome anytime you want. For real." And so began a routine Daniel never imagined having. He started going to Michael and Anna's house every couple of weeks, then every week, then almost every weekend. At first it was strange, even uncomfortable. He didn't know how to act around children, didn't know how to participate in trivial conversations about daily life. But slowly he began to open up. Sophia adopted him as a sort of honorary uncle, always showing him something new, asking him to play, to tell her stories. Laura grew up recognizing his presence, reaching her little arms out to him when he arrived. Anna treated him like family, always making extra food, always worrying if he was okay, if he was eating properly. And Michael became more than an employee at his company. He became a friend. A real friend, something Daniel hadn't had in a very long time. Their conversations grew deeper. One evening, after a simple dinner while the kids were asleep and Anna was cleaning the kitchen, Michael asked, "Daniel, can I ask you a personal question?" "Sure," Daniel replied, curious. "Why are you doing all this? Helping me, coming here every week, getting involved with us?" "I'm not complaining, far from it. But I wonder, you're a rich, successful guy. You must have 1,000 more interesting things to do than spend your Sunday with an ordinary family like ours." Daniel thought about the answer for a long time. "You know, Michael, for a long time I thought I had everything. Money, success, recognition. But deep down, I had nothing. I lived alone in a huge apartment, worked 16 hours a day, had no one to really talk to. When I saw you and your family in that supermarket, I saw something I had lost a long time ago. I saw real love. I saw struggle, but I also saw hope. And when I helped you for the first time in years, I felt like I had done something that truly mattered. Not something that would increase the company's profit, but something that would change real people's lives." Michael listened in silence, and when Daniel finished there were tears in his eyes. "You changed our lives, Daniel, but I think we changed yours too, didn't we?" Daniel nodded, his voice thick with emotion. "You did. You reminded me of what's important. You reminded me that I'm human, not a money-making machine. You reminded me that there are things money can't buy. True connection, love, family, friendship." Over the following months, Daniel's life transformed. He continued to work hard, of course. He was still the competent and respected CFO. But now there was balance. He left the office earlier on Fridays. He reserved Sundays to spend with Michael and Anna. He started to notice the people around him, to see his employees not as numbers on a spreadsheet, but as individuals with stories, struggles, and dreams. In a board meeting, he proposed something unprecedented. "I want to create a social inclusion program at the company," he said, observing the surprised faces around the table. "A program that gives opportunities to people in vulnerable situations, the long-term unemployed, people from low-income backgrounds, former inmates. We'll provide training, support, a chance to start over." The company president, a pragmatic man named Henry, frowned. "Daniel, will this have a financial return? Will it impact our productivity?" Daniel took a deep breath. "Yes, it will have a return, Henry, not immediately, not in next quarter's numbers, but in the long run, yes. We'll create a loyal, committed workforce, grateful for the opportunity. We'll improve our corporate image. And more importantly, we'll be doing the right thing. We'll be helping people who need it." A heavy silence fell over the room. This wasn't the kind of argument used in that environment, where everything revolved around profit and results. But Daniel had credibility. He had years of sound decisions, met targets, and undeniable successes. If he was proposing this, it had to have some merit. After much discussion, the program was approved on a trial basis. Daniel personally took charge of coordinating it. He worked with Sarah to create fair selection criteria, to establish a mentorship system, to ensure that the people hired would have adequate support. The first group had 10 people. Some were chronically unemployed, like Michael had been, a woman who had left the workforce to care for her sick mother and now needed to start over. A young man who had grown up in a low-income neighborhood and never had opportunities. A woman who had lost everything in a flood and was trying to rebuild her life. Each with a story, each with pain, each with hope. Daniel followed each case personally, not intrusively, but he was present. He made sure they had the necessary resources. He talked to the supervisors to ensure they were patient and understanding, but without lowering their standards. He wanted these people to succeed on their own merit, not out of pity. The results surprised even the most skeptical. The retention rate was extremely high. The people hired through the program were the most dedicated, the most punctual, the ones who tried the hardest. Because they knew the value of that opportunity, because they had experienced the desperation of having nothing and now had something to fight for. Michael was one of the program's biggest supporters. He volunteered to be a mentor, to help new employees adapt. He told his own story as inspiration. "I was exactly where you are," he would say. "No prospects, no hope. But they gave me a chance, and I grabbed it with all my might. And look where I am today. You can get here too. It's up to you." His career at the company continued to rise. In 1 year, he was promoted to coordinator. In 2 years, to supervisor. Not because Daniel favored him, but because he demonstrated real competence. The relationship between Daniel and Michael's family grew even closer. He was present at the girls' birthdays, always bringing thoughtful gifts. For Laura's 3rd birthday, he brought a large doll that the little girl hugged and wouldn't let go of. For Sophia's 5th, he brought a pink bicycle with training wheels and spent the whole afternoon teaching her to ride it in the park. He was there when Sophia started school, taking pictures of her first day like a proud uncle. He was there when Laura took her first steps, filming with his phone as the little girl toddled around the apartment. Anna started asking him for advice on everyday things, and surprisingly, he had opinions. He helped Michael negotiate financing for a used car. He recommended a good lawyer when they had a problem with their old landlord. He was becoming part of that family in a way he never thought possible. One December evening, exactly 1 year after that meeting in the supermarket, Anna asked a question that took Daniel by surprise. "Daniel, you're spending Christmas with us, right?" Daniel hesitated. He always spent Christmas alone in his apartment, usually working, sometimes watching a movie. It was just another day of the year for him. "I don't know, Anna. I don't want to intrude on your Christmas." Anna shook her head firmly. "You won't be intruding. You'll be completing it. The girls are already counting on Uncle Daniel being here, and we really want you to come too, please." Daniel looked at Michael, who nodded, smiling. "It's true. You're part of this family now. Daniel, it would be weird to celebrate without you." Daniel felt that familiar tightness in his chest, that emotion he couldn't quite name. "Okay," he said, his voice a little hoarse. "I'll come, and I'll bring dinner. Anna protested, saying he didn't have to, that they would cook. But Daniel insisted, "I want to do this. Let me contribute." On Christmas Day, he arrived early, his arms loaded with bags. He had bought a large turkey, seasoned stuffing, rice pilaf, salads, fruits, desserts, sparkling wine. He had overdone it, he knew, but he wanted this Christmas to be special. Anna was speechless when she saw it all. "Daniel, this is too much." "No, it's not," he said, smiling. "It's the least I can do." They spent the day preparing the meal together. Daniel, who barely knew how to fry an egg, offered to help and ended up learning how to make stuffing with Anna, laughing at his clumsy attempts. Michael set up a small but festive Christmas tree, adorned with ornaments the girls had made. Sophia and Laura ran around the living room, excited, waiting for the time to open presents. When evening fell and the table was set, the 4 adults and 2 children sat down together. Michael asked to say a prayer before they ate, and Daniel, who wasn't religious, respectfully bowed his head. "Lord," Michael began, "thank you for this past year, for all the blessings we've received, for this food, for this family, and especially for putting Daniel in our path. He changed our lives, and we hope we've changed his a little bit too. Amen." Everyone repeated, "Amen." And they began their Christmas dinner. It was the best meal Daniel had eaten in years, not because of the quality of the food, though it was delicious, but because of the company, the laughter, the stories told, the human warmth that filled that small apartment. After dinner, they opened presents. Daniel had bought toys for the girls, a new set of pots and pans for Anna, because he'd noticed hers were old, and a nice watch for Michael. When it was his turn, he received a gift wrapped in colorful paper, clearly wrapped by children's hands. He opened it carefully and found a picture frame with a photo of all of them together, taken on some random Sunday, everyone smiling. Inside was a note written in a child's handwriting. "To Uncle Daniel, you are part of our family. With love, Sophia and Laura." The crooked letters and a few spelling mistakes made it all the more special. Daniel stared at the photo, at the note, and the tears he had held back for so long finally fell. They weren't tears of sadness. They were of gratitude, of belonging, of love. Anna came over and hugged him. "We love you, Daniel. You know that, right?" And Daniel, who couldn't speak because emotion had caught in his throat, just nodded and hugged her back. At that moment, in that small apartment full of love, he finally understood. True wealth wasn't in his investments or his professional achievements. It was right there in that room, with those people who had welcomed him and shown him what really mattered in life. The following months brought changes Daniel never imagined he would experience. That Christmas with Michael's family had opened a door inside him, a door that had been locked for decades. For the first time in a long time, he woke up in the morning with something other than spreadsheets and meetings on his mind. He thought about the girls, how Sophia was doing in school, if Laura was speaking more words. He thought about Michael and Anna, how hard they worked to give their daughters a better life. And he thought about himself, about the man he was becoming, so different from the man he had been. The company's social inclusion program was in its 2nd year, and the results exceeded all expectations. Of the 10 people in the first group, 9 remained with the company, and 5 had already been promoted. The story was starting to attract media attention, and Daniel had to give a few interviews to business magazines. In one of these interviews, the journalist, a sharp young woman named Amanda, asked a question that caught him off guard. "Mr. Miller, what motivated a CFO known for his cold pragmatism in business to create a social program like this?" Daniel was silent for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "For a long time," he finally replied, "I measured success only in numbers, revenue, profit, growth. But numbers don't tell the whole story. Behind every employee is a person with dreams, struggles, a family that depends on them. I forgot that for years, until a chance encounter reminded me of what really matters." The journalist leaned forward, interested. "Can you tell me about this encounter?" Daniel hesitated, but decided to share. "I met a family that was going through a hard time at a supermarket. I helped them, and that help ended up turning into something much bigger. That family taught me that true wealth isn't in what we accumulate, but in what we share." The article appeared on the magazine's cover with the provocative headline, "The Executive Who Discovered Money Can't Buy Happiness." Daniel read the article with mixed feelings. On one hand, he was pleased that the program was gaining visibility. On the other, he felt exposed, vulnerable. He had spent years building a reputation as a tough, calculating executive focused solely on results. Now he was being portrayed as someone sentimental, emotional. He feared it might affect his professional credibility. But the opposite happened. He started receiving messages from other executives, praising the initiative. Other companies asked for information on how to replicate the program. Even Henry, the president, who had been skeptical at first, called him in for a chat. "Daniel, I have to admit I was wrong about the program," he said. "The results are undeniable. We're getting tremendous positive publicity. Employee morale has improved, and the financial return is starting to show. Congratulations." But it wasn't all smooth sailing. As the program grew, so did the challenges. Some long-time employees began to complain that the new hires from the program received too much attention, that there was favoritism. There were cases of people who couldn't adapt and had to be let go, which always pained Daniel, as he saw each case as a lost opportunity. And there was constant pressure to show results, to prove that the program was worth the investment. Daniel worked even harder if that was possible, dividing his time between his responsibilities as CFO and coordinating the program. Nights turned into mornings, and weekends were consumed by reports and planning. Anna was the first to notice. One Sunday afternoon, when Daniel arrived at their house looking visibly exhausted, she pulled him aside. "Are you taking care of yourself, Daniel? Are you eating right? Sleeping? Because you look tired." "I'm fine, Anna," he replied, but his voice wasn't convincing. "It's just a busy phase at work." Anna crossed her arms with that maternal expression she used when she knew someone was lying. "Daniel Miller, don't give me that. You spent years working yourself to death, and now that you've finally found some balance, you're falling back into old habits. You can't do that." Daniel sighed, sitting on the small sofa. "It's just that the program is growing, Anna. There's so much to do, so many people depending on it. I can't let them down." "And you think working yourself to death again is the solution? Do you think the people you're helping will be happy knowing you're destroying your health for them?" Daniel knew she was right, but he didn't know how to do things differently. Work had always been his comfort zone, his refuge. It was easier to immerse himself in tasks than to deal with other things. Anna sat next to him. "You need to learn to delegate, Daniel. You can't do it all alone. And you need to remember that you're a person too. You have limits. Remember what you said yourself? That we taught you about balance. Then practice it." That night, Daniel went home thinking about Anna's words. She was right. He was falling into the same trap as before, only now with a nobler excuse. He decided to make changes. He hired a dedicated team to coordinate the program, competent people who shared his vision but could share the workload. He established clearer boundaries between his professional and personal time. And, for the first time in his life, he began to seriously think about his personal future, not just his professional one. At 43, what did he want from life? Where did he want to be in 5, 10 years? The answers didn't come easily, but at least now he was asking the right questions. Michael was also going through transformations. In 2 years at the company, he had risen from a stockroom assistant to a logistics supervisor. It wasn't a director-level position, but it was respectable, with important responsibilities. He was earning enough to have rented a larger 2-bedroom apartment in a better neighborhood. Anna had gone back to working part-time at a clothing store now that the girls were older and more independent. Their lives had stabilized in a way that had seemed impossible that night at the supermarket. But success also brought insecurities. In a conversation with Daniel, Michael confessed his fears. "Sometimes I wake up at night afraid that this is all a dream, you know? Afraid I'll wake up back in that room at my mother-in-law's with no job, no prospects." Daniel understood perfectly. He knew that feeling of fragility, of not fully believing in one's own luck. "Michael, you built all this with your own effort," he said. I just opened a door, but you're the one who walked through it, who worked hard, who showed your competence. No one can take that away from you. But what if I do something wrong? What if I disappoint you, the company? Michael asked, his voice full of anguish. Everyone makes mistakes, Michael. It's part of it. The important thing is to learn from them and keep going. And you won't disappoint me because I don't expect perfection from you. I expect you to be human, to do the best you can. And you've done much more than that. Michael relaxed a little, but Daniel could see the insecurity was still there, lurking like a shadow. He decided to do something about it. He organized a specific mentorship program for employees who had risen through the social inclusion program. He brought in professional coaches, organizational psychologists, people who could help these employees develop not just technical skills, but also confidence, self-esteem, and the ability to handle success. Michael was one of the first to participate, and the results were remarkable. Within a few weeks, Daniel already noticed a change in his posture. More confident, more assertive. The girls were growing up too fast. Sophia was already 6 in first grade, learning to read and write. Every time Daniel visited, she would show him her notebooks, proud of the letters she was forming. "Uncle Daniel, look, I can write my whole name now." Laura, at 3, was a tireless chatterbox, telling wild stories about her day at preschool, about the imaginary friends she had invented. Daniel found himself smiling at their innocence, at the way they saw the world full of possibilities and magic. It was a stark contrast to his own view, which for so long had been so pragmatic, so focused on measurable results. Anna noticed the effect the girls had on Daniel. "They're good for you," she said one day. "They make you smile. They make you relax." Daniel agreed. "They remind me of how good it is to be a kid, to have that simple joy in things. I lost that a long time ago." "But you're getting it back," Anna observed. "You're allowing yourself to feel again. And that's a beautiful thing to see." Daniel thought about that. Was he really allowing himself to feel? Or were there still parts of him that remained locked away, protected by years of emotional defenses? The answer came in an unexpected way. He was at a corporate event, a boring end-of-year party with clients and partners, when he ran into Julia, his ex-wife. He hadn't seen her since the divorce over 10 years ago. She was with her current husband and seemed happy, lighter than Daniel remembered. They greeted each other with the forced cordiality of people who share a complicated past. "Daniel," she said with a genuine smile, "I heard about your social program. Congratulations. I never imagined you'd do something like that." Daniel smiled back, a slightly sad smile. "I didn't imagine it either. But people change." They talked for a few minutes, a superficial conversation about work and life. But before she left, Julia touched his arm gently. "You seem different, Daniel. More human. I'm happy for you. I hope you found the happiness you were looking for." Daniel stood there as she walked away, processing her words. Had he found happiness? He was happier than before, no doubt. He had true friends, a family that welcomed him, a purpose that went beyond numbers on a spreadsheet. But there was still a void, a loneliness that persisted when he returned to his empty apartment every night. He had built strong connections with Michael's family, but at the end of the day, he still slept alone, still woke up alone, still lived fundamentally alone. He talked about this with Michael one night when they stayed up, late talking on the apartment balcony, after everyone else had gone to bed. "I don't know if I'm truly happy," Daniel admitted. "I'm better, much better, but I still feel like something's missing." Michael lit a cigarette, something he rarely did, only when he was deep in thought. "You need to build your own family, Daniel. Not to replace us, but to have someone for yourself, someone to share your life with, the successes, the struggles. You have so much to give, so much love stored up. You can't waste that." Daniel shook his head, skeptical. "I don't know. If I still know how, Michael. I've been alone for so long, I've built so many walls, I don't know if I can tear them down. And I'm 43, not some young guy full of energy." "You tear down walls one at a time," Michael replied. "And age is just a number. My dad met my mum when he was 50 and they had 20 happy years together. It's never too late to start over." Daniel wanted to believe it, but it was hard. The work, the responsibilities, Everything always seemed more urgent than his emotional needs, until something happened. That changed his perspective. It was a Saturday, when he had promised to take Sophia and Laura to the zoo. Anna and Michael had different commitments, so Daniel offered to spend the afternoon with the girls. He was excited, had bought snacks, prepared a backpack with water, sunscreen, everything. The three of them went in his car, the girls singing children's songs in the back seat, Daniel laughing at the funny lyrics. At the zoo, they walked for hours, looking at the animals, Sophia reading the signs to Laura, both of them marveling at each creature. Daniel took dozens of photos, wanting to capture every moment. They stopped for ice cream, and while the girls licked their popsicles, an elderly woman approached. "Your daughters are beautiful," she said, smiling. "You must be a very proud father." Daniel was speechless for a second. "No, I'm not their father," he explained. "I'm a friend of the family." The woman looked confused. "Oh, I'm sorry. It's just the way they look at you. I thought you were their dad." And she walked away, leaving Daniel thoughtful. Later, on the car ride home, Sophia asked out of the blue, "Uncle Daniel, don't you have any kids?" Daniel adjusted the rearview mirror to see them in the back. "No, Sophia, I don't." "Why?" "Because," she said, with the brutal honesty of children, "you would be a really cool dad." Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. "Thank you, Princess. That's very kind of you to say." When he dropped the girls off at Michael and Anna's, he stayed longer than usual, somewhat reluctant to leave. Anna noticed. "Did something happen? Is everything okay?" Daniel told her about the woman's comment at the zoo and what Sophia had said afterward. Anna listened attentively, and when he finished, she sighed. "You have so much love to give, Daniel, and you deserve to receive love too, not just the love of friends, but the love of a partner, the love of your own children, if that's what you want. But for that, you need to open up again. Allow yourself to be vulnerable. I know it's scary, but it's also beautiful." Daniel went home that night with his head spinning. He entered his silent apartment, looked around at the expensive, lifeless furniture, the empty walls, the total absence of any sign that someone actually lived there. It was a magazine-perfect house, aesthetically pleasing but emotionally dead. He turned on his computer, but instead of opening financial reports as he usually did, he found himself looking at the photos he had taken at the zoo. Sophia and Laura smiling, hugging the stuffed animals he had bought them. The two of them eating ice cream with messy faces. Laura sleeping in the back seat on the way home, her head resting on Sophia's shoulder. They were simple moments, but full of meaning, full of life, full of love. And Daniel realized he wanted that for himself. Not just as a visitor in other people's lives, but as the protagonist of his own story. He wanted to build something of his own, something real, something that would last. But he didn't know where to start. In the following days, Daniel was more introspective than usual. Michael noticed but respected his space, knowing there were things each person needed to process alone. It was Anna who finally confronted the situation. She arranged a lunch with Daniel, just the two of them, at a simple diner near the office. "Daniel," she said after they ordered, "you know we consider you family, right?" Daniel nodded. "I know, and you have no idea how much that means to me." "But," Anna continued, "we can't be your only family forever, not because we don't love you, but because you deserve more. You deserve to have someone who is there just for you, who sleeps next to you every night, who wakes up with you every morning. Someone to share not just Sundays, but every day with." Daniel looked down at his plate, pushing his food around without eating. "I know, but I don't know how to do that. I've been alone for so long, it's become so normal, and I'm afraid to open my heart again and be rejected, or worse, to repeat the same mistakes I made with Julia." Anna took his hand across the table. "You're not the same man you were when you were married to her. You've learned, you've grown, you've changed. And yes, it could go wrong, it could hurt, but it could also go right. It could be wonderful, and you'll never know if you don't try." Daniel took a deep breath. What if I don't know how to be in a relationship anymore? What if I'm incapable of opening my heart? Anna smiled. "You already opened your heart to us. If you could do that, you can do it with someone else. You just need to give yourself permission. That conversation planted a seed in Daniel. He started paying more attention to the people around him, allowing himself to consider possibilities he had ignored for years. He wasn't actively looking for someone, but he was more open, more present, more willing to see what life had to offer. And sometimes, when we least expect it, life surprises us in unexpected ways. Daniel was about to discover this in a way that would change everything again. The third year of the social inclusion program began with a surprise no one expected. The company was invited to receive a national award for corporate responsibility, recognizing the program's positive impact on both society and the business. The ceremony would be in Washington, D.C., a major event attended by officials, business leaders, and the press. Henry, the president, decided that Daniel should go to receive the award in person, along with someone representing the program's beneficiaries. The obvious choice was Michael. When Daniel told him the news, Michael could hardly believe it. Me? Go to D.C. to receive an award? Daniel, I don't even know how to speak in public. Daniel smiled, placing a hand on his friend's shoulder. You just need to tell your story, Michael. The truth. How things were before, how they are now. You don't need a fancy speech. You need honesty. And no one can tell that story better than you. Michael agreed, nervous but determined to do well. The trip was scheduled for a Tuesday in March. Daniel and Michael flew together, and it was Michael's first time on a plane. Daniel watched his friend's excitement as he looked out the window, amazed by the clouds, by the view from above. It's surreal, isn't it? Michael commented. 3 years ago, I couldn't afford a can of milk. Now I'm going to the Capitol to receive an award. If someone had told me that back then, I wouldn't have believed it. Daniel thought about how life takes strange turns. I wouldn't have believed it either, he said. If someone had told me I'd find my purpose in a supermarket, helping a stranger. Life has its ironies. In D.C., they stayed at a 5-star hotel. Michael called Anna as he got to his room, excited as a child. Anna, you should see this place. The bed is huge, there's a marble bathroom, everything is so luxurious. Anna laughed on the other end of the line. Enjoy it, honey. You deserve it. And don't forget to record when you receive the award. I want to show the neighbors. The ceremony was the following night. Daniel wore an impeccable suit, as always. Michael wore a new suit he had bought especially for the occasion, with Anna's help. They met in the hotel lobby, and Daniel couldn't help but feel proud, seeing his friend there, so different from the defeated man in the supermarket. You look sharp, Michael, he complimented. You almost look like an executive. Michael laughed nervously. Don't exaggerate. But thanks. I feel like an imposter in this get-up. You're not an imposter, Daniel assured him. You've earned your place here, never forget that. The ballroom was packed when they arrived. Hundreds of people, lively conversations, camera flashes. Michael clutched the ceremony program in his hands, trying to control his nerves. Daniel introduced him to several important people, and Michael was surprised by his own ability to converse, to present himself. Maybe Anna and Daniel were right. Maybe he really had changed, grown more than he realized. When it was time to receive the award, they both went up on stage to applause. The host read an emotional description of the program, highlighting its achievements. More than 50 people hired in 3 years, a retention rate above the market average, a proven positive impact on the communities where the employees came from. Daniel accepted the trophy, gave a brief thank you, and then passed the microphone to Michael. This was the moment everyone was waiting for. The real story, told by the one who lived it. Michael took a deep breath, looked out at the audience of hundreds of unknown faces, and began. My name is Michael Davis. 3 years ago, I had been unemployed for over a year. I lived in a single room with my wife, 2 young daughters, and my mother-in-law. I didn't even have money to buy milk for my baby. One night, at the supermarket, I was $12 short on my groceries. $12. It sounds like a small amount, but at that moment, it was the difference between my daughter having something to eat or not. The audience was completely silent. Michael continued, his voice choked but steady. A man I had never seen before saw what was happening and paid for my groceries. He didn't know me, he owed me nothing, but he decided to help. That man is standing next to me today. He didn't just help me that night, he gave me the opportunity to work, to rebuild my life, to have my dignity back. And he didn't just do it for me. He did it for dozens of people who were in the same situation. This award doesn't just belong to the company. It belongs to every person who believed they deserved a second chance. It belongs to Daniel, who had the courage to create a program like this. And it belongs to all of you here, who in some way believe that we can build a better world where people help each other instead of just competing. When he finished, there were tears in the eyes of many in the audience. The applause was long and emotional. Daniel hugged Michael on stage, and at that moment he felt that it had all been worth it. Every extra hour worked, every challenge faced, every sleepless night. It was worth it because it had truly changed lives. After the ceremony, they were surrounded by people wanting to congratulate them, take pictures, ask questions. Michael handled it all with surprising grace, sharing bits of his story with everyone who asked. Daniel watched from the side, proud, thinking about how this man had blossomed when given an opportunity. How many Michaels were out there, just waiting for a chance? How many lives could be transformed with a simple act of humanity? They returned to New York the next day, tired but happy. On the flight back, Michael said something that would stay with Daniel forever. "You know what's craziest about all this? I thought you saved me that night at the supermarket, but over time, I realized we saved each other. You gave me a job and dignity. My family and I gave you something to live for beyond work. We completed each other." Daniel didn't respond immediately, just nodded, a lump in his throat. Because it was true. They had saved each other. In the following weeks, life returned to normal, but with a difference. The award had brought even more visibility to the program, and now other companies were seeking Daniel out for consulting, wanting to replicate the model. He turned down most invitations, but accepted a few to give talks, to share his experience. Not for the money or fame, but because he believed that the more companies adopted similar programs, the more lives could be changed. At one of these talks in New York, for a group of business leaders and management students, Daniel met Megan. She was a professor of social responsibility at a private university and had come to the talk to discuss the topic with her students. After the presentation, during the reception, she approached him. "Mr. Miller, your story is inspiring. I'd love to talk more about the program if possible. Maybe schedule a more detailed interview for my research." Daniel agreed, and they exchanged contact information. The first interview was scheduled for a week later, at a coffee shop near the office. Daniel arrived on time, as always, and found Megan already waiting, with a laptop open and a notebook full of notes. She was about 38, with brown hair tied in a messy bun, thick-rimmed glasses and a warm smile. "Thank you for agreeing to talk with me," she said, shaking his hand. "I'm doing research on social programs in private companies, and yours is one of the most successful I've found." They talked for 2 hours. Daniel shared all the details of the program, the challenges, the successes, the individual stories that made it all worthwhile. Megan asked intelligent questions, took notes, and shared academic insights that Daniel found fascinating. By the end, he realized he had really enjoyed the conversation, not just the topic, but the company. Megan was smart, passionate about her work, and had a light-hearted way of talking about serious subjects. When she suggested a second interview to delve deeper into some points, Daniel readily accepted. And a third, and a fourth. At some point, they stopped being interviews and became conversations. They talked about work, but also about life, dreams, frustrations. Megan was also divorced, had no children, and had dedicated the last few years to her academic career. They shared many similarities, but also interesting differences. She was more spontaneous than he was, more of a dreamer. He was more pragmatic, more cautious, but somehow they complemented each other. Daniel didn't realize exactly when, but at some point during those conversations, he started to feel different, anxious for their meetings, thinking about her at random moments during the day, smiling when he saw a text from her on his phone. It was scary and exciting at the same time. He talked to Anna about it one Sunday. "I don't know if I'm going crazy," he confessed, "but I think I'm starting to like her, and it terrifies me." Anna nearly jumped for joy. "Finally! Daniel, that's wonderful. Tell me more. What's she like?" Daniel described Megan, the way she saw the world, her passions, her dreams. Anna listened with a huge smile on her face. "And have you told her how you feel?" Daniel shook his head. "No way. What if she doesn't feel the same? What if I ruin everything?" Anna rolled her eyes. "Daniel Miller, you're the CFO of one of the biggest companies in the country. You've made multi-million-dollar decisions. You created a social program that changed dozens of lives. And you're afraid to tell a woman you like her?" Put that way, it sounded ridiculous. But that's exactly how he felt. Ridiculous, insecure, like a teenager. But maybe that's what love did to people. It made you vulnerable, took you out of your comfort zone. And after so many years of protecting himself, building walls, maybe it was time to let himself be vulnerable again. Michael, when he found out, was just as excited. "Dude, you have to tell her. Life's too short to be afraid." Daniel knew they were right, but it still took him a few more weeks to gather the courage. It was an April evening, after another one of those meetings that were no longer interviews. They had had dinner at an Italian restaurant, talked about everything and nothing, and laughed more than at any other meeting. When Daniel drove her home, they sat in the car talking for another hour, reluctant to say goodbye. Megan commented on how much she had enjoyed getting to know him, how he had a depth that few people showed. And Daniel, before he could talk himself out of it, said, "Megan, I need to tell you something." She looked at him, curious. "Go on." "I know we started this as a professional interview," he said, choosing his words carefully. "But for me, it stopped being that a while ago. I like being with you. I like talking to you, hearing your ideas, seeing you smile. And I don't know if you feel the same, but I had to tell you because I can't pretend this is just a friendship anymore." There was a silence that seemed to last an eternity. Daniel started to regret it, thinking he had ruined everything. But then Megan smiled, that smile he had grown to adore. "I thought you'd never say it," she said softly, "because I've felt the same way for weeks." The relief Daniel felt was immense. They sat there in the car, talking late into the night about feelings, fears, expectations. Megan had her own insecurities, her own walls built by her previous divorce. But they were both willing to try, to open up again, to give a chance to what was growing between them. It wouldn't be easy, they both knew. They had baggage, histories, scars. But they also had something precious. They had learned from their mistakes. They had matured, and they had the courage to try again. The news was celebrated by Michael's family. Anna hugged Daniel so tightly she almost knocked him over. "I'm so happy. For you," she said with tears in her eyes. "You deserve this so much." The girls were excited about meeting Uncle Daniel's new friend. And when they finally did, at a lunch at Michael's house, the chemistry was immediate. Megan was a natural with kids, playing with Sophia, making Laura laugh with funny faces. Daniel watched it all, and felt his heart fill in a way he had never experienced. The following months were a time of discovery. Daniel and Megan took things slow, respecting each other's pace but building something solid. He introduced her to some work colleagues. She took him to meet her parents, who lived upstate. They took a weekend trip to the beach and spent hours walking on the sand, talking about possible futures. Daniel found himself thinking about things he thought he'd never think about again. Living together, getting married again. Maybe even having kids, though he was older now, or adopting, or just enjoying life as a couple. The possibilities seemed endless. The social inclusion program continued to grow. In its 4th year, it had helped over 80 people. Some stories were as touching as Michael's, a woman who had lost everything in a fire and was now a department coordinator. A young man who had grown up on the streets and was now taking night classes at college while working. A woman who had been abandoned by her husband with 3 children and now supported her family with dignity. Each story was a universe of pain and resilience, and Daniel knew them all. Michael continued to advance in the company. He had been promoted again. Now he was a logistics manager with a team of 20 people under him. He had bought a better car, was saving money for a down payment on his own apartment. The girls were in a private school, taking ballet and swimming lessons. Anna had gone back to school, taking a technical course in administration. Their lives had completely transformed, and the most beautiful part was that they hadn't forgotten where they came from. Michael volunteered at shelters, helping people in situations similar to the one he had been in. Anna donated clothes and toys the girls no longer used. They taught their daughters about gratitude, empathy, and the importance of helping others. A year and a half after that Italian dinner, Daniel proposed to Megan. It was nothing grand. It was on a regular Sunday at Michael and Anna's house with the kids playing in their room as lunch was winding down. Daniel simply took Megan's hand and said, "I love you, and I want to build a life with you. Will you marry me?" Megan started crying and laughing at the same time. "Yes," she said, 1,000 times. "Yes." The wedding was simple, in a small chapel, with few guests. Michael was the best man. Anna, the maid of honor. Sophia and Laura were the flower girls. In pink dresses they adored. There was no extravagant luxury, no ostentation. There was love, sincerity, and the presence of the people who truly mattered. At the reception afterward, Daniel made a toast that summed up everything he had learned. "For a long time," he said, holding his champagne glass, "I thought success was measured in money, in titles, in power. I had all of that and I was completely empty, until one night in an ordinary supermarket, I met a family who taught me what really matters. They taught me about generosity, humility, and true love. Michael, Anna, Sophia, Laura, you changed my life, and Megan, you completed that transformation. Today I know that true wealth isn't in what we have, but in who we are and who we love. Thank you all for being here, for being part of this journey." There was applause, hugs, tears of joy. It was a simple moment, but perfect, exactly as life should be. Daniel and Megan moved in together into an apartment smaller than Daniel's penthouse, but cozier, more full of life. They decorated it together, choosing each piece of furniture, each painting, creating a real home. They started talking about having children, and although Daniel was now 45, he felt he was ready this time, ready to be a real father, present, involved. Christmas that year was special. Daniel and Megan spent Christmas Eve with Michael's family, as had become tradition, but the next day they traveled upstate to visit Megan's parents, creating a new tradition. It was a beautiful balance between the old and the new, between the families you choose and the families you're born into. At dinner, as everyone was gathered, Michael proposed a toast. "To Daniel," he said, raising his glass, "the guy who paid for my groceries in a supermarket 5 years ago, and changed everything." Daniel shook his head, smiling. "No, Michael. To you and your family who showed me what it truly means to live." And as they toasted, with the sound of children laughing in the background, with Megan smiling by his side, with Anna and Michael exchanging loving glances, Daniel finally understood. That moment in the supermarket 5 years ago wasn't him helping a family in need. It was life giving him one last chance to reconnect with his humanity. It was the universe telling him that it's never too late to start over, to change, to choose love, over fear. The $12 they were short that night were nothing, but what they represented was everything. They were the difference between continuing to live an empty life of success or starting to live a life full of meaning. Daniel had chosen the second path, and that choice had transformed not only the lives of Michael and his family, but most importantly, his own. Years later, when Daniel had grey hair and Michael had become the company's director of operations, when Sophia was in college and Laura was in high school, when Daniel and Megan had 2 young children of their own running around the house, they still gathered on Sundays. The tradition continued, now with more people, more stories, more love. On one of those Sundays, Daniel's oldest son, a 6-year-old boy named Peter, asked, "Dad, how did you meet Uncle Michael?" Daniel looked at his friend and they exchanged a knowing smile. "It's a long story, son, but I can tell you. It all started one December night, in a supermarket, when they were $12 short." And then Daniel began to tell, with the whole family gathered around listening, the story of how a small act of kindness had changed 2 lives forever. The story of how true wealth is not measured in money, but in love, in connections, in shared moments. The story of how it's never too late to start over, to allow yourself to feel, to choose humanity over coldness. And as he told the story, looking at all the people he loved gathered there, Daniel knew he had finally found what he had always been searching for. It wasn't at the top of a building, in a bank account, or in an important title. It was right there in that simple room, with simple people living simple moments. But they were worth more than all the gold in the world, because they were real, because they were true, because they were full of love.